How my child's choice changed my life forever. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My child slid a contract across our kitchen table and said, "Choose." I am Dana, 56, a hospice nurse who counts time in breaths and goodbyes. My hands know the weight of promises, to keep people comfortable, to witness them without judgment. Rowan is 19, brilliant at starting things, allergic to finishing, and lately wrapped in a dazzling new crowd that calls itself a wellness collective. The contract in front of me mentioned a membership bond and shared guardianship obligations and a deadline of tonight at 9. "It's simple," Rowan said. "I move into the house this weekend. I sign, you sign as emergency guarantor, and everything is handled." "Handled how?" I asked. "Tuition, housing, meaningful work. Mason says I'll finally have structure." The name had become a drumbeat. Mason says, Mason believes, Mason can get it done, until I heard it even when the apartment was quiet. I earn $27 an hour and pick up night shifts when we're short. I keep a car older than some of my patients because it starts every morning, and I know exactly what I can lose: my savings, my lease, the small planning I've done so neither of us lands in a crisis ward of life. The contract's font looked professional. The math smelled like bleach and pennies. "I won't control you," I said, "but I won't sign blind." Rowan's jaw tensed. "You don't believe in me." "I do," I said, and it was true, and also terrified. "I believe in your light. I don't believe in fine print that hides shadows." I flipped to the last page and saw a notary block with tomorrow's date stamped already, like time had decided for us. My throat went dry. I imagined a room where strangers would read my hesitations like a map of weak points. "If this is freedom, it shouldn't require my collateral," I said softly. Rowan glanced at the clock, then at their phone, then back at me. "I need your answer before the meeting, Mom. Mason's waiting." I set water to boil, because tea is ritual, and ritual keeps fear from sprinting. Steam lifted like a prayer I couldn't phrase. I folded my hands to keep them from shaking and thought of the one thing that could still protect us both. I realized there was one safeguard left if courage didn't fail. When Rowan was 8, we built a city out of shoeboxes and paper towel rolls. The bridges sagged. The tape peeled up like tired smiles. Rowan insisted the city's motto should be, "We fix things together." I said yes then because the stakes were cardboard and glue. Now our city feels like it's made of contracts and whispers, and the motto is testing me like a pop quiz. I raised Rowan alone. Their father was more exit than presence, a postcard every other year and a promise to call when the weather cleared. The weather never did. I learned to make ordinary traditions feel large. Tuesday pancakes, Sunday library trips, a vocabulary of eye contact that meant I hear you even when I disagree. Last month we collided over something small that grew fangs: Rowan's car insurance. "It's just one missed payment," they said. "Mason says I should stop chasing bills like that and live bigger." "Living bigger usually means paying attention, not less," I said. Rowan slammed a door so hard a picture frame leaned sideways and stayed that way for a week. At work, Mrs. Landry squeezed my hand and asked, "Your face looks like you swallowed a question." I told her I promised my child I would never be the kind of parent who chooses control over listening. "Love is listening with rules," she said. "Otherwise it's weather." Tonight, Rowan's eyes glittered with the same shiny certainty they had when they first rode without training wheels. My stomach remembered the wobble. I promised I wouldn't control, and still I needed a rule: no signatures without understanding. I texted Tasha, my neighbor and union steward, who can smell a bad clause like I smell spoiled milk. "Emergency look at a contract." I wrote. Her bubbles popped up instantly. "Bring it. And bring tea." I told Rowan we'd review it within the hour. They said Mason had already scheduled a notary. I printed 2 copies, highlighted verbs, circled numbers, and wrote questions in the margins because ink is how I breathe when rooms get small. I pictured a room that would not wait for my questions and knew this would get messy fast. I grabbed my coat, the contract, and Tasha's spare courage. First oddities arrived like flies at a picnic, small, persistent, easily waved away until they weren't. Mason's name appeared on a group chat Rowan forgot to mute, a threaded list of accountability goals and giving pledges. I saw a screenshot of a template agreement posted by someone named Aura. Copy, paste, fill in blanks. We'll celebrate it circle. Rowan stopped answering my mid-shift check-ins. When I knocked on their door, music swelled, then cut off. A package arrived labeled Member Kit, with a logo of 3 hands forming a triangle. "It's for the house chores and projects," Rowan said, eyes bright, voice fast. "We contribute and get so much back." "How much?" I asked. "Depends on what's fair," they said, which is another way of saying depends on who's in power. I checked my bank app the next morning and saw 3 $40 cash transfers out, Rowan's side hustle payments. The notes said Circle Fund, Emergency Pool, and a single heart emoji. 40 isn't ruinous, patterns are. I scrolled farther. Another 40. Another. Then 100 labeled bond seed. In the break room, I read the contract while the microwave hummed. There was a clause on shared guardianship obligations that referenced a hypothetical minor to be placed with the house as a community mentoring opportunity. A line required a responsible adult guarantor until the member established income sufficiency. My name would make me the cliff they build on. At noon, a registrar from the community college called. "We received a filing to access Rowan's educational record under a mentorship provision. Can you verify you consented?" I hadn't. A PDF arrived showing a box checked next to parent/legal guardian. At the bottom of the email thread sat Mason's signature block with pronouncements about accountability and bravery. I told myself maybe this was a paperwork mix-up, the way medicine orders get double-entered until a pharmacist barks and saves a life. Then a notary appointment pinged my phone with my name slotted in as if I had already agreed. The calendar invite title read, "Guarantor Completion, Celebratory Circle to Follow." Celebration assumed consent. Assumption is the prettiest mask control wears when it wants applause. It escalated on a Wednesday I had counted on for quiet. The hospice census dipped. I planned to repair the kitchen sink's steady tearful drip. At 5 o'clock, the registrar hold appeared on Rowan's portal. Administrative review pending. At 5:06, my landlord called to say he'd received a proposed lease addendum requesting my unit be reclassified as a community hub for educational gatherings. "Is this your thing?" he asked. It was not. At 6, I walked to the house, the former dentist's building on Walnut now smelling of sage and ambition. Mason greeted me with camera-ready warmth. "Dana, we're building something beautiful," he said. "Rowan will thrive with structure and accountability." "Accountability is lovely when it's shared," I said. "May I see your bylaws?" He laughed as if bylaws were a charming inside joke. "We're post-bureaucracy. We move with trust." "Then you won't mind if I read the contract with someone who reads for a living." His smile thinned. "Don't poison their momentum. They need to graduate from your fear." Behind him, Rowan arranged jars on a shelf labeled apothecary, like stage props waiting for belief. I felt the old parental reflex. Don't embarrass your child. Press against the new one. Don't abandon them to a polished stranger. That night, a process server knocked, asking for my acknowledgement of a membership guarantee. I refused to accept. He slid a card under the door anyway. On our Blocks group chat, neighbors debated the house with emojis and theories. Tasha posted a single sentence. "Contracts are just promises wearing suits. Read the suit." I stood at my sink, listening to its weep, and realized the drip matched the seconds to Rowan's 9 p.m. meeting. At 8:30, my phone buzzed. "Mom, don't be late. Mason says we need the guarantor present." The word "need" detached from help and flew like a moth toward flame. I printed the lease addendum, highlighted the reclassification line, and wrote an O in letters big enough for my future self to hear. Then I put on my shoes, shut off the weeping sink, and carried my pen like a small, stubborn lantern. I would attend the meeting, but not as anyone's automatic signature. The house meeting felt choreographed for cameras that didn't exist. String lights softened the edges of cheap chairs. A whiteboard bloomed with the words choice, courage, community. Mason stood at the front like a host. Rowan squeezed my hand and whispered, "Please be open. This is my path." I counted pulse beats to stay steady. "I'm open," I said, "and I'm reading every page before I sign anything." Mason introduced a circle where members offered affirmations, then asked newcomers to declare their commitments. When it was Rowan's turn, they said, "I commit to growth, service, and transparency, with my mom as guarantor until I can fully contribute." A dozen faces turned toward me like sunflowers tracking heat. I haven't agreed to guarantee anything, I said. I'm here to understand. Mason floated a chuckle to show he could tolerate difficult people. Of course, we love questions. He gestured to Aura, who projected a PDF. A notary block filled the screen, dated tomorrow, my name typed where a signature should go. That's not my signature, I said. Aura smiled gently. It populates to reduce friction. It's aspirational. Tasha slipped into the back, caught my eye, and touched her clipboard like a talisman. She mouthed, paper trail. Rowan spoke fast. Mason says the guarantor clause is temporary, just 90 days. Tasha raised a hand. Where does it say 90 days? Because I'm seeing until income sufficiency as defined by counsel. Mason's jaw flexed. Context matters. So does language, Tasha said. Language keeps roofs over heads. The room's temperature changed, and I realized kindness could be air conditioning for control. Mason suggested we take a family huddle in the office, and I followed the two of them down a hall lined with photos of smiling faces and no captions. The door clicked shut with the confidence of a seatbelt before a crash. Inside, he lowered his voice. Dana, your fear is writing Rowan's life for them. My fear keeps ambulances from arriving, I said. And ambulances are punctual. Rowan stared at the carpet like answers were woven into the pattern. One sentence from me could anchor us, or cut the last rope. In the office, Mason angled his chair so the window framed him like a halo. You raised an extraordinary human, he said, voice soft as gauze. They are ready for real responsibility. Our framework protects them from drift, gives purpose. Rowan's shoulders squared, absorbing the compliment like sunlight. I set the contract on the desk. Let's read together, I said. Out loud. Mason's mouth twitched. Legalese can spook people. We prefer plain talk. Plain talk is just legalese without footnotes, I said. Let's read. Rowan slid closer to me, citrus soap and brave posture. I read Section 7, Shared Guardianship Obligations. It named a minor, initials only, currently in temporary placement. Members could rotate care to build capacity. Guarantors promised to assume financial responsibility if placements evolved. Evolved is for butterflies, not contracts. This is about service, Mason said. Stepping up for a community kid. Who screens for safety? Who holds liability? Who audits funds? I asked. Accountability is collective, he said, as if tragedy were an address you could write to everyone and no one. Rowan squeezed my hand. I can do this. You taught me to show up. We show up with boundaries, I said. Otherwise we disappear inside other people's needs. I opened my folder and slid out printouts, registrar emails, bank records, invites. Tasha had annotated them in neon. Who benefits? Who decides? Where's oversight? Mason's jaw ticked. This feels adversarial, he murmured. It's adult, I said. Adult means clarity before commitment. Rowan looked between us like watching a tennis match that keeps rewriting rules mid-serve. We can meet in the middle, Rowan offered. Mom co-signs, but only for 90 days. Find 90 days in writing, I said. Otherwise 90 is a story. Mason leaned forward, palms steepled. Dana, say yes tonight, and I will personally guarantee exit flexibility. Promises without paper are smoke rings. Beautiful, then gone. I waited. Rowan swallowed. Please, Mom. I need you to believe in this version of me. I needed to believe we could reach truth without breaking the bridge we still stood on together. I told them truth needs daylight, witnesses, and a clock that isn't theirs. The next morning, Tasha met me at the credit union with a folder labeled breadcrumbs. She wears certainty the way some people wear perfume. You notice before she speaks. Start with money, she said. Money narrates when people embellish. We sat with Marcy, a teller who has watched my emergency withdrawals for years and never asked why. Marcy pulled transaction histories Rowan had authorized last year when we set up their student account. See the pattern? Tasha traced a finger across recurring transfers. 40, 40, 40, then 100. Notes reading circle, pool, bond seed. Here's the outlier, Marcy said, pointing at a cash advance tied to a third-party app under Aura's email. Next, the registrar, a woman named Patel who believes in exactness like it's a religion. She confirmed an access request on Rowan's education record under a mentorship clause that typically requires parental consent if the student is under 21 and financially dependent. We received a checkbox for consent, Patel said. Signature looks auto-populated. Tasha scribbled, autofill is not equal to consent. From there, we found Rowan's former roommate, Jules, who met us at a laundromat that smelled like steam and second chances. They love-bomb new members, Jules said, feeding quarters. Then there's accountability, which means your whole life is a group project. If you question the leader is suddenly the group. I left when rent got reimagined. Reimagined how? Tasha asked. Rent became contribution, which became missed commitment, which became fines, which became public apology night. Attendance is mandatory unless you're leading something marketable. I wrote marketable and underlined it twice because marketable is a word that explains a lot of human choices. Jules showed us screenshots, templated pledges, a calendar of circles, and a list titled Council. Mason at the top. Dates on the images didn't match the contract revision history. Tasha drew a box around the mismatch. Timestamps lie when power needs them to. Every breadcrumb spelled pressure, and the trail led straight through Mason. The mini-twist arrived as an email with a subject line that tried to sound boring. Amendment, service cohort placement. It wasn't boring. The house had been preliminarily approved to mentor a 16-year-old, initials K.R. Pending court review. The amendment expanded shared guardianship to include emergency medical consent for cohort leaders and guarantors. The language was simple, almost tender, the way danger sometimes whispers. I felt the floor tilt. This wasn't just about Rowan's rent or my wallet. It was about stepping into legal responsibility for a stranger with a past we didn't know, through a structure no agency seemed to fully supervise. Rowan texted a confetti emoji. We get to help for real. Help is a holy word that can hide a collection plate. I called Ortiz, a social worker who has lectured our church about predatory mentorships. Ortiz listened, then exhaled. Community models can be beautiful, she said. But any plan that centralizes power around one charismatic figure without external oversight runs hot. Emergency consent should live with licensed guardians or agencies, not clubs. If they're asking you to be the adult of last resort, they must meet adult standards. She offered to sit in a meeting to translate jargon into hazard lights. I emailed Mason proposing a mediation at the courthouse facilitation room. Neutral walls, neutral chairs, a whiteboard that doesn't belong to anyone. He replied, courthouse energy is punitive. Let's keep it in the circle. I wrote back, neutral venue protects everyone, including you. No response. Then Rowan. Mason says courthouse screams distrust. Why can't you be supportive? I typed and deleted 4 drafts, then sent. Support means safety first, signatures second. I printed the amendment, circled consent clauses, and placed sticky notes like tiny lifeboats along the margins. When I looked up, the clock said 1:17 a.m. and the room felt like it was waiting for us to pick a future. I decided the next step would happen under lights I didn't have to plug. I built a plan with 3 legs because tripods don't wobble. Leg 1, documentation. I used my phone to screen record the contract portal, scrolling through version histories with timestamps, capturing the notary block that held tomorrow before today had finished. I saved registrar emails, bank exports, and Jules's screenshots to a labeled drive. Rowan, due diligence. Leg 2, professionals. Ortiz agreed to attend, and Tasha knew a legal clinic attorney named Lyle who speaks fluent clause. Leg 3, witnesses who love Rowan without loving Mason. I invited Mrs. Landry's daughter, Patrice, a teacher Rowan trusts, and asked the credit union to send a fraud prevention specialist for general questions. I told Rowan everything. Transparent, I said. You taught me that word, and it's still good. They texted, feels like an ambush. It's a seatbelt, I replied. If the car is safe, it never locks. Mason finally answered with a compromise that wasn't one. The house office, with an observer from their counsel. I repeated my courthouse room request and sent a calendar invite. 2 hours of silence, then a ping. Accepted, conditional on positivity. Positivity is the word people use when they mean obedience with a smile. I printed place cards to make the room feel less like a fight and more like a table where adults do long math. I wrote questions on a legal pad. Who defines income sufficiency? Who controls council elections? Where do emergency consent funds reside? were audited reports. Then I added the one question that gets to the marrow. What happens if Rowan says no and walks away today? On my way to the courthouse, I packed granola bars, highlighters, tissues, and the small courage that comes from knowing ambulances exist even if you never want to need one. Outside the courthouse, I rehearsed sentences under my breath the way trainees practice compressions: steady, countable, life-giving. I pictured Rowan as a child at science night, explaining circuits with hands that believed wires could be friendship if you connected them carefully. I reminded myself that saying no to a structure can be saying yes to a person. I also wrote a short letter in my notebook addressed to future Rowan. If this feels like betrayal, remember I refuse to let strangers notarize our love without witnesses. On a sticky note, I listed outcomes from best to worst. Best, honest review, revised contract, clear exit ramp. Middle, stalemate, hurt feelings, time to think. Worst, coercion escalates, we walk. Tripods hold because each leg knows its job. Mine were evidence, experts, and love that doesn't sign away houses. If they refused the room, I would read the receipts on the sidewalk. The close call began in our living room. Mason asked for a family talk before the courthouse, framing it as a kindness. He arrived with a casserole dish and a practiced softness. Dana, he said, placing the dish like an offering. Conflict eats energy. Let's not feed it. Rowan perched on the arm of the couch, eyes flicking between us like they were translating. Mason turned to them. Your mom is scared. It's not her fault. Fear builds small cages and calls them homes. I inhaled, counted 4, exhaled. Homes are where people sleep safely, I said. Cages have locks on the outside. He clasped his hands. If she signs tonight, we can skip court tension. We'll add a courtesy clause acknowledging her concerns. Courtesies don't move money, I said. Clauses do. Rowan's voice cracked. Can't you meet me halfway? I wanted to. I want to meet my child halfway for everything except cliffs. Then Mason played the guilt card with perfect posture. If Dana refuses, council may reconsider your place in the cohort. We need members whose families support growth. You deserve a future without anchors. Anchor is what boats call safety when storms begin. My hands trembled, and I felt the undertow of wanting my child to be accepted anywhere that promised kindness. Then Tasha texted a single sentence that rang like a bell. Halfway to a cliff is still falling. I put the casserole in the fridge, a small domestic victory. We'll see you at the courthouse, I said. Mason smiled without teeth. Positivity, Dana. Be mindful what energy you bring into rooms. Energy is what keeps hearts beating under rules you can't negotiate with. After he left, I opened the casserole and found instructions for reheating printed like a benediction, the kind that sounds pastoral until you notice the brand watermark. I ate one spoonful standing at the counter and tasted obligation in cream and pepper. Rowan watched me. Do you hate him? They asked. I hate systems that need charm to keep standing, I said. He believed in me first, Rowan whispered. I believed in you before pronouns, I said, smiling because history is a kind of belief too. We sat with the kind of silence that isn't empty, just full of sorting. I wrote 3 questions on an index card and slid it to Rowan. What do you want? What are you afraid of? What will still be true in 5 years? They wrote, belonging. Disappointing everyone. I love you. I put the card in my wallet like a relic I could touch when rooms got loud. For a moment, love felt like a language I could no longer speak. The courthouse mediation room smells like old carpet and fresh decisions. A rectangle of table. Neutral chairs. A timer on the wall shaped like mercy. Lyle from the clinic arrived with a satchel and a smile that apologized in advance. Ortiz brought a slim folder and eyes that missed nothing. Patrice waved to Rowan with that teacher look that says you are not alone. The credit union specialist, Devin, set a small stack of brochures by the water pitcher like breadcrumb offerings. Mason entered with aura and a council member I didn't know, introducing him as Reed. Rowan squeezed my hand once, then let go, performing adulthood for themselves, which is a necessary audience. I opened the meeting. We will read the contract aloud, I said, pointing to the screen, and we will mark discrepancies and ask questions in turn. No interruptions, no shaming. Mason nodded, serene as a screensaver. Aura projected the PDF. Lyle cleared his throat. Please scroll to revisions. Note dates. First revision date, Tuesday. Second, Wednesday morning. Notary block, Thursday, tomorrow. Why does a notary block show Thursday today? Lyle asked. Aura, we pre-fill to streamline. Lyle, streamlining a signature is not notarization. Reed leaned back. Let's keep vibes constructive. Ortiz, vibes don't shield children or guarantors. Words do. Devin flipped a brochure. Third-party cash advances tied to group obligations often signal coercive structures. Mason's jaw worked. People here are pathologizing community. Rowan whispered. Can we please just talk about what I want? Yes, I said. And let's make sure what you want isn't defined by a contract that edits itself. A silence opened like a cracked door with a draft behind it. Reed requested a 5-minute break to reset vibes. In the hallway, I caught my breath by the vending machine and bought the loudest chip bag I could find, a tiny rebellion against curated calm. Rowan leaned near. I don't want you and Mason to hate each other. I don't hate him, I said. I hate editable promises. Rowan nodded, a new wrinkle of doubt between their brows like a road finally drawn on a map. When we returned, the timer blinked 10 o'clock like a heartbeat we could count on. Then Lyle asked Aura to open the audit log Mason swore didn't exist. Aura hesitated, then clicked a tiny gear icon that bloomed into an audit trail. Rows of entries stacked like sediment. Edits, role assignments, permission escalations. Lyle traced timestamps with a pen. Here, Reed elevated to administrator last night, then altered guarantor defaults. Here, the 90 days promise exists only in comments, not clauses. Ortiz pointed. Consent language toggled from emergency contact to emergency authority at 2:11 a.m., then toggled back at 2:18 a.m. Who made those changes? Aura swallowed. Administrator. Reed's smile was winter. We iterate quickly. Our community is agile. Devin. Agility without control is how fraud breathes. Lyle, let's ask the central question. Where are the funds? Who signs checks? Who audits? Mason leaned in, voice velvet. Do not reduce meaning to money. We are building character. Character signs its own checks, Tasha muttered, loud enough. Patrice touched Rowan's sleeve. What do you need to feel safe right now? Rowan looked at me, then at the screen. I wanted a scaffold. I didn't want this. Mason snapped, the velvet torn. This is how small minds kill movements. Dana, you are smothering potential because you fetishize caution. Everyone heard the mask hit the floor. Lyle clicked to the notarization panel. This document cannot be notarized tomorrow with pre-filled signatures. Any notary doing so risks sanction. If you proceed, my clinic will file a complaint. Reed stood. Meeting over. Not yet, Ortiz said, comma blade. We need a plan for Rowan to exit any implied obligations without retaliation. Reed's phone buzzed with messages he pretended not to read. Patrice asked Rowan about classes, anchoring the conversation in a life outside this document. Devin outlined how guarantor arrangements trigger risk flags, not because families are unloving, but because predators love guarantees. Ortiz sketched a flowchart for real emergency consent. Agency, on-call supervisor, documentation, review. Scaffolds hold until muscles strengthen, she said. Scaffolds do not own the building. Lyle slid a plain language addendum across the table. No guardianship, no guarantor, opt out at will, council elections with outside oversight. Mason refused to touch it. We are not a corporation. You're asking for corporate-level responsibility, Lyle replied. Pick a lane and obey traffic laws. Rowan rubbed their temples. If I walk away, do I become an enemy? Reed smiled thinly. You become irrelevant. Irrelevant is safer than owned, Ortiz said. Rowan's breath hitched once, and then they whispered, finally, I'm not sure. Fallout moves faster than sense. Within 24 hours, the House posted a statement about misinformation and fear-based narratives without naming us. My landlord forwarded a withdrawal of the lease addendum. No reclassification after all. Rowan's phone flared with messages, some pleading, some shaming, a few calling them brave for questioning. They didn't get out untouched. Aura billed a missed commitment fee through the app. Devin helped us dispute it. At work, I swapped shifts to make the courthouse meeting. Then Mrs. Landry crashed at 3 a.m., and I spent my last intact nerve at her bedside whispering, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. Grief doesn't cue politely. Neither do bills. Rowan cried on the couch, cheeks blotchy. I wanted to help a kid, not become somebody's revenue stream. Wanting to help is noble, I said. Being used while you're helping is common. Tasha helped us draft a cease and desist for unauthorized access to Rowan's records. Lal filed a complaint on the notary pre-fill practice and flagged the guardianship language for the juvenile court liaison. Ortiz connected us with a parent group that meets in a church basement and serves coffee like communion for the sleep-deprived. Mason texted Rowan directly. You've embarrassed the circle. Doors close for people who slam them. Rowan showed me the message, hands shaking. I hate that I care what he thinks. Caring is human, I said. Let's teach it new addresses. The clinic emailed us a checklist titled Exit Hygiene. Revoke app permissions, request data deletion, document threats, talk to a counselor, tell 3 allies. Rowan followed it like a recipe and cried anyway, because clean doesn't mean painless. I made coffee and wrote to KR. In my head, I don't know you yet, but you deserve a scaffold that doesn't wobble and adults who sign things they understand. I lit a candle, not for magic, but for focus, and watched the flame behave exactly like science promised it would. I wondered what price we'd still pay that hadn't been invoiced yet. Healing is paperwork and soup and choosing not to dignify every ping. Rowan and I wrote boundaries on paper, then taped them to the fridge where magnets could swear to witness. Rule 1. No contracts without independent review. Rule 2. No payments through apps tied to community obligations. Rule 3. If a group needs secrecy to survive, that group can survive without us. We set a therapy intake with a counselor who doesn't use words like alignment to describe paying bills. Ortiz helped Rowan craft a volunteer plan with agencies that use background checks and boredom as safeguards. Boredom is underrated. It saves people. We emailed Patrice our thanks and dropped off flowers in Mrs. Landry's room. Grief was still there, and so was gratitude, and sometimes they hold hands like old friends. I returned the casserole dish, empty, with a note that said, "Please remove me from future invitation lists." Mason replied with a curt thumbs up. Good. Rowan found a part-time shift at the library, where the only circle is on the calendar for book club. We ate Tuesday pancakes on a Thursday because rituals are adjustable. When the apartment went quiet, I let myself cry for the version of adulthood Rowan had to lose to meet the sturdier one. Then I opened my planner and wrote, savings transfer, small, but ours. I also wrote, remind landlord the sink still weeps. Some leaks stop. Some need a wrench. Boundaries, we learned, are wrenches disguised as sentences. On Sundays we walked the neighborhood and named dogs by guesswork. A golden retriever became Harold because Harold looked like he paid bills on time. Rowan laughed the first honest laugh in weeks and took a picture of a crooked mailbox I adore. We practiced scripts for pushy invitations. No, thank you. That doesn't work for us. Please remove our information. I taught Rowan my hospice trick for hard calls. Write the sentence you're afraid to say on a card and read it when courage is busy elsewhere. At night, we cooked soup so ordinary it felt like wealth. I replaced the sink hoses with Tasha's help. The weeping stopped like a good story ending on time. I realized support with limits can feel like love finally learning grammar. Reflection is the first quiet after a siren. I stood at the bus stop before sunrise, the city gray and honest, and watched a paper cup tumble without drama. I thought about how love had sounded lately, loud, performative, conditional, and how I wanted it to sound now. Steady, audible, boring to bystanders. I used to believe good parenting meant absorbing every blow so Rowan wouldn't bruise. Now I think it means teaching where to stand so fewer blows land. If you're a parent staring at a contract that promises the moon with your name as the gravity, ask who controls the tides. Ask to read aloud. Ask for revisions history. Ask for audit logs and bylaws and the sentence that begins, if I change my mind. Collect evidence like you're building a bridge you'll need in bad weather. Invite witnesses who love truth more than harmony. And if your child chooses a path that scares you, remember autonomy without information is just momentum wearing a crown. At dinner, Rowan said, I still want to help K.R. someday for real. Me too, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. We made a list, agencies, trainings, places where adults answer to other adults. Then we ate pancakes on a Tuesday, and the sink didn't weep, and the apartment felt like a city we were still building together. On the fridge, the magnet held our rules steady like a small, good hand. Weeks later, Rowan brought home a flyer for a mentorship program run by the city, with training modules and background checks and supervisors who answer phones. We filled out forms together, the kind that ask boring questions whose beauty is in their bureaucracy. At the orientation, a trainer said, "Consistency beats charisma." I wrote it down and underlined it twice. When we got home, we taped our fridge rules straighter and added a new one. Rule 4. If a promise requires secrecy, call a grown-up who isn't selling anything. On my next night shift, I whispered to a patient's daughter about exit hygiene and love that doesn't disappear when you say no. She nodded, eyes wet, and said, "I wish my mother had a Dana." I said, "So do I." So I became one for us. Hope returned quietly, like a house light turning on after a storm.